So dear student, I am Dr. Usma and today I am going to discuss with you what are the gene, what are the genome, what are the chromosome and what are the diseases that has been caused due to defect in gene, genome or in the chromosome number. So let's get started. First of all, let us know what are the gene and what are the genome and what is the basic difference. This is a diagram, okay? Over here, you can see there is a cell. Inside the cell, there is a nucleus. And when we look inside the nucleus, this is a condensed form of a DNA known as a chromosome. When we zoom in it, the structure of the chromosome, we see this structure which contain different bases. So what are the gene? Gene are the specific segment of the DNA that influence certain aspect of growth and health. How growth and health are related to the gene? Look, every gene is responsible for making a specific protein and that protein help in making certain enzymes or in the regulatory protein. Okay, for example, let's the protein which it make is insulin. Insulin help uh, um, okay insulin help to decrease the glucose concentration in our body. So if there is a defect in the protein, then insulin is not going to make properly and it's lost its activity, as a result of which it won't be able to decrease the concentration of the glucose in the blood, which ultimately result in the disease known as a diabetes. Similarly, gene also help in growth. How gene help in growth? For example, this is the DNA and these are the gene, and this gene is making a protein. And suppose this is a regulatory protein. Regulatory protein, it help in regulation. For example, this protein help in cell cycle division. If there is not proper functioning of the cell cycle, it may lead to the decrease in the growth of the cell, as a result of which some portion of a body might function properly, the other may not, as a result of which the growth of the body won't be proper. So genes influence not only the growth but also the health of a person. Collectively, scientists refers to all of an organism gene as a genome. This gene altogether in a whole organism is known as a genome. What are DNA? DNA is a genetic material or the code that tells cells in the body how to replicate themselves. This is a nucleus. Inside the nucleus there is a DNA and it has a genetic material, full of genetic material. It tells the body how to replicate themselves because the DNA make another copy during replication, and from that mRNA is produced. From the mRNA, protein has been synthesized. So this process of DNA replication has been taught in molecular biology lecture. I will provide you the link in the description. Kindly watch that video so that this statement will be very much clear to you. Almost every cell in an organism body contain a complete copy of a genome. What do you mean by a complete copy of a genome? One from the maternal side, one from the paternal side. This together, all together, contain a complete copy of genome packed into a chromosome. This DNA inside the nucleus has been completely wrapped like this. Why it is completely wrapped? Suppose this is our nucleus. This is our cell. Inside the cell there is a nucleus, and suppose this is the whole DNA strand. This DNA strand can't be fit into this, so it has to be really much coiled, and its size should be so much decreased that it will be able to fit inside this nucleus. Chromosomes are thread-like structure consisting of the DNA and protein that sit inside. The chromosome not only contain the DNA but also the protein. These are the regulatory protein which help that the DNA won't clump together or stick together. What are these proteins? These proteins are mainly histone protein. You might not heard this term, but in molecular biology, this is very used oftenly to explain the DNA structure and during the replication process. Okay. Now let's see a descriptive view of gene. Gene consists of a DNA, which is a genetic material that tells cell how to reproduce. How a gene tell the DNA how to reproduce? Okay, this is our DNA, and when we look at the DNA strand, these are the genes. And genes is a genetic material that tell. Okay, this whole DNA constitute the gene, and it is a genetic material that tells cell how to reproduce, mean how to replicate, how to make multiple copy, so that the complete organism can be formed. The strand of the DNA look like a twisted ladder. What do you mean by twisted ladder? This is a DNA structure. But when we see this structure, it looks something like this. And inside there are bases. Can't you see this look like a twisted ladder? This structure is known as a double helix. What are the double helix structure? This structure has been told by the Watson and Crick model. Okay. So the DNA contains the four chemicals known as the bases. These are adenine, cytosine, guanine and thymine. And in this combination, you just always remember that A always pair with double bond with T and G always pair with triple bond with C. This is a very important point. I have already explained this in a previous lecture. I will provide you the link. If you want to know more about the molecular biology, kindly watch that video. It is a very simplified form I have given over there. Okay, this is our cell. Inside the cell, you can see this is our nucleus and this is the chromosome. When we uncoil this small portion of the chromosome, we see this DNA structure, which not only contain the DNA but also the histone protein. And these are the genes, and there are nucleotide bases present known as thymine, adenine, cytosine and guanine. Okay, the order of these chemical bases in a person determine how the cell grow and develop. How the cell how the cell able to understand this? Because our DNA contain many genes. Maybe let's take 1, 2, 3 and 4. Suppose this first gene is responsible for color of skin and this 4 gene is responsible for the height. So it means that these DNA determine the cell grow and develop. This DNA will tell the cell this much size you have to grow and not more than that. If there occur an abnormality during the DNA replication or any cell cycle process, it might lead to a cancer or any deleterious disease, which further lead to teratogenesis. What is a gene? Gene is a segment of the DNA that contains sequence of many bases varying in size from few hundred to 2 million. Each gene affects a specific aspect of health. For example, some genes contain instruction how to make a specific protein. For example, let's take this is our nucleus, this is our DNA, and the DNA contains many genes. Suppose this gene is responsible for making protein like insulin. This DNA will tell the protein has already been instructed that if this is an alpha and this is the beta strand, it will tell the cell that whether you both have to join to make a complete functional protein or whether you have to cut one protein and left only the beta protein to make a complete functional protein. Okay. The parent passes their gene to the biological children. As a result, each person has 2 copies of each human gene. For example, if the father contains capital A gene and the mother contains small a gene, then the zygote or the child will have capital A, small a gene. From each parent, in total, the human body contain between 20 to 25,000 genes. 20,000 to 25,000 genes. Okay, let's see what are the genome. The word genome refers to all the genetic material in the organism, all the genetic material. Just remember this statement. The human genome consists of around 3 billion base pairs. Almost every cell in a body contains a complete copy of organism genome. If there is a defect, this leads to a very defective diseases. Tightly packed inside it a chromosome. You can see the chromosome structure. This is the chromosome. It has been really much tightly packed. The chromosomes are present in the nucleus of every cell. I hope this point is clear. Does everyone has the same genome? Most of the human genome is the same in all the people. However, 0.001% of the genetic material will be different from person to person. This figure is even smaller in the person who are related to each other. What do you mean by related? This relation has been told in very much detail in genetics portion, which is known as the Hardy-Weinberg law, the things are very much related to each other. But till now, you just remember when the two person, for example, the brother and sister, they are closely relative or the cousin. Over here, there is a given a figure, which is there is a slight difference is 0.001%, but it may vary to 0.01% when we are going to it to a layman person. This is the exact figure. This is the exact figure, and this is a figure which you need to tell to. Then let's see what is the basic difference between the gene and genome. Gene is a part of a DNA molecule, whereas the genome is the total DNA in the cell. Another difference is heredity element of the genetic information. It is a heredity element, whether the genome all set of the nuclear DNA. The gene encode for protein synthesis, whereas the genome encode not only for the protein but the regulatory element of the protein synthesis. The gene length is about few hundred bases, but for the genome it is about in higher organism, like in multicellular organism, it is about billion base pairs. In higher organism has about 1,000 of genes. Whether the genome, each organism has only one genome. The variation of the gene name allele can be naturally selected. What do you mean by allele? Allele are the alternating form of the gene. And what are the alternating form? For example, this is capital A, this is capital A, small a, this is small a, small a. When we take in the amount, this is a homozygous pure, this is a heterozygous, and this is also a homozygous. So what are the alternating form of the allele? This capital A and this is small a. These both are alternating. When I tell you, when I ask you what is written over here, you just say it is capital. You just say that is A. But if I ask you what is specifically written over here, you will tell this is a capital A, this is a small a. Then it is discriminated into the horizontal gene transfer and duplicated cause large variation in the genome. How does gene affect the health? Due to the genetic disorder and how this condition occur? This condition can be occurred by two ways, autosomal dominant and the autosomal recessive. What do you mean by the autosomal dominant? This means that the inherited just one copy of the gene can cause the disorder. For example, if any from the father or the mother, one defective, this is a defective gene. Whether two defective gene or one defective gene. If the gene mutates during the fetal development or early in the life, this can result in a person having a genetic variation that the parent don't have themselves. I hope this statement is clear. Then let's see what are the autosomal dominant inheritance and what are the autosomal recessive inheritance. Over here there is a very simple diagram whether the father when the father is affected and the mother is unaffected, or vice versa case. In both the cases you have seen there is a 50-50 chance, means that the 50% child, whether it is a boy or a girl, it won't be affected, while the another 50% means if this is a total 100, okay, if this is a total 100, then we 25% both boy and girl will be affected, while the other 25% means 50%, 25 and 25, both boy and girl won't be affected. But in the autosomal recessive inheritance, the father will be a carrier or the mother will both be a carrier. For example, these are AA and AA. It will lead to AA, AA, AA and AA. You can see that these both are carrier, this is normal and this is the child will be affected. So this is the affected child, carrier child, unaffected child. So over here the genome will be AA. Over here both the carrier should be AA because they have a one defective copy, and the affected child will have this gene. Okay, this is the Hutchinson disease. Okay, this is a case of Marfan syndrome and this is the achondroplasia. You can see in Hutchinson disease you have a difficulty in talking, there may lead a fever, any more and many more condition. Where in Marfan syndrome, the best thing is that in the Marfan syndrome you can see this. This is a pectus excavatum, okay, and this is a achondroplasia case. The achondroplasia case is different from the dwarfism. It is a type of dwarfism, but it is not. The dwarf people are fully mature and they are able to reproduce, while in the achondroplasia, this condition is quite different. In autosomal recessive inheritance, this is a cystic fibrosis case where is a mucus block the air sac of the alveoli, as a result of which the person is won't able to breathe properly. And the another case is what? This is a sickle cell anemia where the shape of the red blood cells has been changed into a sickle shape. What are the basic terminology used? The basic terminology is what are the genetic, genome, okay, I don't know what happened to this. Wait a moment. Okay. Okay, by this you can read. What are the terminology? Genetic. It is the study of the gene, how the parent pass on them to their children. That is a very simple case. What are the genome? Genome is this is the study of the genome. It includes the analysis of all the person gene, how they interact with each other and with the environment. It is how they interact with each other and with the environment. Okay, what are the genotype? Genotype refers to the person requires genome, which the people can find out by undertaking the personal genome sequencing. This you will going to study in a little bit higher classes, but I will explain to you what are the genome sequence in the future class. Till now, just remember this word. The genotype sequence influence such an eye color or the risk of the certain diseases. RNA, RA stand for ribonucleic acid. Similarly to the DNA, it is a genetic material, but it only has one strand or a single helix. The RNA helps the cell in the body to understand, interpret, and use the genetic coding, DNA coding. Okay. The summary of this whole chapter is just two basic points, and the point is the gene is a specific segment of the DNA that tell the cell how to function. A genome is the genome is the entirety of the genetic material inside an organism. The human genome consists between 20,000 to 25,000 genes. Most of the human genome is the same for the person to person, but variation in the gene can influence someone's health, appearance, and the risk of developing the certain diseases. There are also some condition that occurs as a direct result of a specific genetic variant. What do you mean? Variant means variation over here. And for example, the sickle cell anemia, you can see the normal glucose, glucose, I'm sorry, talking. The normal blood cell structure means the red blood cell structure has been changed to a sickle shape, which leads to a disease known as sickle cell anemia. Okay, thank you so much for watching. I hope you like the video. If you really like it, please let me know in the comment section, and let me know the another topic which you really want to study. Thank you.